In this video, I'll share with you some of my favorite tips for adding a curved zipper. I'll be demoing this technique on the Evie Messenger Bag, but you can easily use it on the Lainey Backpack or the Liana Bowler Bag or any bag you'd like. Adding a curved zipper is not much more difficult than adding a straight zipper, so follow along for some of my favorite tips to help you in your next bag. I have all of the supplies ready to add this zipper to my flap for my Evie Messenger Bag. So let's go over some of the basics here. I have my flap pieces. I have one outside and one lining. I do have two other pieces. I'm just holding on to those for afterwards. I always like to start with just half. So I've set those aside. I have some clips, some pins, my small scissors, and of course my zipper. This is one of our zipper by the yards. This is the teal with antique brass. I've made a double zipper, so it has two pulls here, which means it can open nice and wide. You can find the tutorial on how to put the pulls on to one of these zippers also on my YouTube channel. So let me give you some tips. First, I'm going to take my lining piece and just set that aside. And I'm just going to start with this piece right here, the outside. When it comes to adding a curved zipper, I don't find it that much more difficult than adding a straight zipper. There's just a couple of little extra things you'll want to do. I find that I pin and clip a lot more with these. And when it comes to the curved part, I'll give you some tips on how to get that to lay nice and flat. So in the pattern, it's going to show you how it looks with the zipper both closed and open. I like to work with it open, so that's how I'm going to show you in this demo. So first thing I'm going to do is add a clip to this end right here, just to make sure that my pull doesn't fall off. And I'm going to go ahead and open it and move one pull down to the end. I'm going to do the same over on this side as well. And like I said, in the pattern, it will show you both techniques. I just like to do it with the zipper pulls open because I find that it's a lot more flexible and easier to get around the curve. Sometimes if you're new, especially to installing zippers, this can look confusing because what side should I be working on? But I'll show you how to make sure that you are always lined up correctly. So my zipper is going to go right side down on this outside piece. And normally I would mark the center just so that I know I have enough zipper. I'm just going to kind of fold this. I'm working with just one half and find my center and just roughly eyeball my center here. You can absolutely mark it. I'm just not going to right now. So I'm going to take this roughly in the center, and my zipper teeth are facing down. So my zipper is going to be right side down with the outside, and I'm adding a clip. I use clips on the straight parts and I use pins on the curved parts. That just seems to work for me. I think the clips are a little bit quicker, but I don't really like them as much on the curved part. So now that I've done just this little bit in the middle, before I do anything else, because I know that this zipper is actually longer than the flap to make it easier, I'm not going to do any of these straight sides. I'm going to go right over here to the curve. And before I even take this to the curve, what I'm going to do is grab my small scissors and I'm going to make some little snips. These are maybe 1/4 of an inch apart, doesn't really have to be any specific measurement, and they're less than 1/4 of an inch in. I don't want to cut too far in because that will show when the bag is done, and I don't want any of these little snips to be showing. So I'm just going to snip along as much as I think I need. I can always go back in and add more, and I'm going to take a few pins here, and I'm going to pin. I always pin with them out towards the outside of the bag. That way when I add my flap, my lining piece of my flap, I'll know where the pins are so I won't sew over them and I can take them out. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin just like this and keep pinning. Sorry, this is the boring part, but the more you pin, the better this is going to look. And I am just aligning up this edge of the zipper with the raw edge and the outside edge of my outside piece. Trying not to pin it to my ironing pad here. So just get a few more pins. All right, I'm just going to do half just so you can see how it looks. And again, in the pattern and also in the Liana Bowler Bag and the Lainey Backpack, this technique is used. So this will be useful for any of those bags as well. Just going to add one more pin here and then clip. And what I recommend that you do in the pattern, and I do this at home as well, is once you get this pinned and clipped in place, and once you have your entire zipper all the way around just on this half, I recommend that you take this to your sewing machine and you stitch about 1/8 of an inch. So you're basically just basting the zipper in place. I'm going to keep pinning and then I'm going to take this to my machine and baste it, and then I'll show you how to add your lining piece. I've gone ahead and with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, I went ahead and basted my zipper. Again, that seam allowance is not super important. As long as it's less than 1/4 of an inch, it will be fine. So my zipper again is open. It looks a little bit messy. If you were doing this with your zipper closed, it's just gonna look like this. So you would have the sides of your zipper. So now hopefully that shows you a little bit clearer. I like to do it open, but you are absolutely welcome to do it closed, and you can use the same technique with the snipping. So I'm going to go ahead and just open that back up again. And there we go. So this half of the zipper I don't need, so I just kind of push it out of my way. So now that I've basted this in place, I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine to sew the lining piece on. And what I'm going to do is take my lining piece and put that right side down. So I have my outside and my zipper right sides together, so the zipper is right side down, and I have my lining piece also right sides together with the outside. Now, because I've basted this in place, I usually don't add any pins or clips to this piece. You can if you'd like, if you want to just add a couple just to keep it from shifting. But because they both have interfacing, I'm not concerned with them stretching at all. And my zipper is in place, so I'm not really concerned about pinning this piece. Where I'm going to be the most careful is on the corners. And when I start sewing them, I kind of feel with my finger as I go along to make sure that that is not doing this or getting caught. If I do happen to get any little puckers or pleats, I can always take my seam ripper and fix that. But I don't know about you, I would like to take that out as little as possible. So I'm just gonna line this up. I'm gonna take this to my sewing machine. It doesn't matter what piece is on top when I'm sewing because they're both interfaced. Again, I'm not worried about stretching. I am gonna make sure that I backstitch when I start and stop. So I'm gonna take this over, sew it with 1/4 of an inch, and then I'll be back to show you how to add your other two pieces. I pressed my flap piece from the outside as well as the inside. I always like to press on both sides just to make sure that this doesn't accidentally roll up in towards the zipper. You don't want it to get caught and make using your bag more difficult. So now that I have this pressed, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch. I top stitch anywhere from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and I measure from my seam here. So I'll be going through both layers. Make sure that you change your bobbin thread if you need to. Sometimes when you have a dark outside and a lighter inside, you'll want to do that. So I'm going to go change my thread, do my top stitching, and then I'll be back to show you how to add your next two pieces. I've gone ahead and done my top stitching. I did 1/8 of an inch. You can absolutely do 1/4 of an inch if you would prefer. I already had my 1/8 of an inch foot on. Plus lately I've found that I just like to have a more narrow top stitching. You could even do a double stitch if you wanted. It's your bag, so you can make whatever choice you'd like. My zipper is closed now, just so you can kind of see how that looks. So my first outside and lining piece were sewn onto half the zipper. So now I'm going to take the other two pieces and put them onto the second half. So again, I do like to keep my zipper open. I'm just going to turn this a little bit, but you can very easily keep it closed if you would like. I'm going to start pinning this with it closed. And as I mentioned earlier, I pin a certain way. That way, if I want to add my lining piece and sew all at once, I can do that. And I'll show you how that looks in case you want to skip the basting part and just sew your outside lining and zipper all in one shot. You absolutely can. I would recommend if you're newer to sewing curved zippers that you try the basting technique. I find that when I'm in a rush and I try to do it all at once, that's when I'm going to get little puckers and pleats in the corner, and nobody wants that, and you don't want your zipper to not be as perfect as it can be. Plus, I don't want to get my seam ripper out. So I'm going to start this just to show you in case you would like. Normally, again, I would have my centers marked. I am just kind of eyeballing this. I'm going to take a clip and put a clip right here, and I've placed my outside right side together with the first outside, and it's on the opposite side of the zipper. So I'm right over here on this opposite side. And my zipper is closed. I'm going to keep it closed until I get a few clips in, and then I am going to open it. You can keep it closed the whole way. I just don't like fighting with this little bit right here that doesn't want to be as flexible. So now that I know it's where I want it positioned, I'll go ahead and open. And my clips are not touching the zipper teeth, so I don't even have to take them off. Go ahead and just unzip. And as you can also see, this zipper is quite a bit longer than it needs to be. It's hanging off a few inches on each end. The reason for that is because I find it much easier than trying to work with a smaller zipper. Can you? Absolutely. But on this bag and on the Liana Bowler Bag, I find that I would rather have a larger zipper. On the Lainey Backpack, you do have some tabs that are added to your zipper. So in that case, you actually have to have the exact right size zipper, and all of that is explained in the pattern. So I'm just going to scoot this part out of the way. That way we can just look at this one. And I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to cut my little snips here. Again, about 1/4 of an inch apart or so, less than 1/4 of an inch deep. Don't get too close to the zipper teeth. And just like that, I'm just going to try to pin this quick so I can show you, if you want to skip the basting, how that's going to look. And I do this sometimes, kind of depends on the day. Depends on how I'm feeling. Most of the time it ends up fine, but if I'm going to get a pucker or a pleat in my zipper, typically it's because I skipped the basting step. So a couple more pins here. I'm just loving the color of this zipper against this canvas. Even though it's a navy canvas, I just think the teal looks so pretty. So there we go. And I'm going to add a couple of clips here and here. All right, so now that this is all done, now if I want to, and again, I would obviously go ahead and pin the rest of this and clip that in place. Now what I would do if I want to skip the basting step is to take this lining, right sides together. So it's the same steps as the first time. Outside, right sides together with the zipper, lining, right sides together with the outside. And what I do is line this up. I will move these clips, but I don't adjust the pins. I've already taken the time with the zipper, so what I'll do is just line that up, take a clip, and just add an extra clip in there. That way I don't have to take anything out. So once I get this lined up, I can sew 1/4 of an inch, turn it right side out, press and top stitch, and then I'm ready to continue on with my pattern. I hope this helped in answering some questions on how to put in a curved zipper. Feel free to check out the rest of my tutorials. Thanks and happy sewing.